World War II is taught as a conflict of clear lines, allies versus Axis, good versus evil. But beneath the public alliances, another war unfolded. A war of secret negotiations, concealed cooperation, and political deals that never reached the public record. Some of these alliances shaped battles. Others shaped the future. This is the story of a war fought not just on battlefields, but in the shadows. Recently unsealed fragments reveal meetings between officials from opposing sides. These encounters were described in coded language, neutral exchanges, temporary alignment, or strategic communication. The notes detailing these meetings were hidden for decades. Why? Because they challenged a clean narrative we've all been taught. They suggest that the lines between friend and foe were far more blurred than we imagine. The history we know is the one written by the victors, but what about the one rewritten by the shadows? As we peel back the layers of official history, one small but strategic nation appears repeatedly in redacted memos. Its name is consistently blacked out, but its actions are clear. This country officially declared itself neutral. It was a public stance of non-involvement. But behind the scenes, it was anything but. Classified records reveal it sold essential resources to both the Allies and the Axis. Its ports hosted secret envoys from warring nations, and its diplomats facilitated covert exchanges of information and goods. The official history books call it neutral. The classified records, however, call it essential. It was a masterclass in geopolitical maneuvering, playing both sides to secure its own survival and prosperity, regardless of who won the war. This nation wasn't just observing the conflict. It was profiting from it, acting as a secret bridge between enemies. Even more shocking than a nation playing both sides is the evidence of technology trades between countries that were officially at war. Declassified intelligence reports, once stamped with the highest levels of secrecy, describe clandestine transfers of critical military prototypes. We're talking about advanced submarine parts, encrypted communication devices, and even next-generation aviation technology. These weren't minor exchanges. They were transactions that could tip the scales in key battles. These deals didn't happen in government offices. They took place in remote harbors under the cover of darkness, in unmarked warehouses on neutral soil, and during nighttime convoys that slipped past naval blockades. The question is, why would military and industrial leaders risk charges of treason for such exchanges? The only logical answer is that the stakes were higher than national loyalty. Perhaps the real goal wasn't just winning the war, but securing a technological advantage in the world that would come after. Among the most heavily redacted files is a document that references a temporary cooperation pact. This pact was allegedly signed between two nations who were, at that very moment, locked in brutal combat on the front lines. They were official, declared enemies. The dates listed on this fragmented document align perfectly with the period where, mysteriously, the fighting along their shared front slowed to a near standstill. Troops on both sides reported a strange lull. Another heavily censored memo from the same time period contains a chilling phrase: both sides had agreed to limit engagement. This informal truce, this secret pact to pause the bloodshed, is not acknowledged in any textbook or official military history. It was an alliance erased from the record, a moment when two enemies decided that cooperation, for reasons we may never fully know, was more valuable than conflict. War is not just fought with soldiers. It is fueled by money, and financial records, long suppressed and buried in dusty archives, tell a story of their own. They show massive flows of gold, currency, and other resources being routed through a handful of neutral banks. These institutions, based in countries like Switzerland and Sweden, became the financial conduits of the war. They allowed enemy nations to fund their military operations simultaneously, often using the very same banking systems. A factory in an Axis nation could receive a loan from a bank that was also managing assets for an allied government. Officially, these banks were uninvolved bystanders, committed only to the principles of financial privacy. In reality, they were lifelines. They provided the liquidity that kept the war machines on both sides running, blurring the lines between enemies and creating a web of financial dependency that transcended the battlefield. In a file labeled Operation Nightingale, almost entirely blacked out, lies a clue to one of the war's greatest secrets. The few legible words describe a covert mission where high-ranking officials from multiple warring nations met secretly, their purpose, to coordinate an outcome that, according to the file, decisively steered the war's future direction. No other details are provided. The entire section describing the plan and its execution is redacted. But the timing of this secret meeting aligns with a sudden, inexplicable turning point in the conflict, a moment when the tide of the war shifted dramatically, seemingly overnight. This wasn't a battle or a brilliant tactical maneuver. It was a pre-arranged event, a decision made in a secret room that changed the fate of millions. The real history of that turning point may not have been written on the battlefield, but at a negotiating table no one knew existed. As the war drew to a close, a different kind of secret operation began. Several high-value individuals from the losing side, scientists, intelligence officers, and political strategists, were quietly extracted and given new identities. They were shielded from prosecution and relocated to allied nations. The official narrative might call these humanitarian acts, but the truth was far more calculated. These individuals possessed knowledge scientific formulas, strategic intelligence networks, or political secrets that the victorious powers desperately wanted for themselves. They were not saved out of mercy. They were acquired as assets. These extractions were cold, strategic transactions designed to ensure that the secrets of the old regime became the tools of the new world order. The enemy of yesterday became the protected resource of tomorrow. Perhaps the most cynical revelation comes from documents that predate the war's end by years. These files show that post-war treaties, industrial agreements, and territorial plans were already being drafted while the fighting was still at its peak. While millions of soldiers fought and died on the battlefield, believing they were fighting for their nation's survival, politicians and industrialists were already carving up the future. They were negotiating control over resources, redrawing maps, and signing contracts that would define the post-war world. These secret agreements show that for some, the war was not just a struggle of ideology, but a massive, violent business negotiation. The outcome was being decided not by the last shot fired, but by the first contract signed. So why were these alliances hidden? Why go to such extraordinary lengths to suppress these records, redact these files, and erase these events from history? Because if the world learned that supposed enemies cooperated for mutual gain, if they learned that nations betrayed their own allies behind closed doors, If they learned that the war was shaped as much by backroom deals as it was by heroic battles, the very foundation of modern geopolitics could fracture. The simple narrative of good versus evil provides stability. The truth, however, is far more complex and unsettling. This brings us to the final question. What else do these suppressed alliances reveal about the world we live in today? They suggest that history is not just something that happens and is then recorded. Sometimes it is engineered. The Second World War wasn't just fought on the ground. It was negotiated in the shadows. If you're ready to uncover more Forbidden's archives, subscribe to the True Story Files and tell us in the comments, which secret World War II alliance do you believe was the most consequential?